So we were talking, I think 2 hours ago. Hey, so what are we gonna intro with today? And we both just had that empty stare into the void.
We're like
no idea.
Florida, alligators, Key West, Miami Beach. You know what else? And we're like, I'm not sure.
Doesn't work. It never works. And at least what we haven't done today, all the good intros, we sit here usually, unless it's like today where you come, right on the money.
Too late.
Yeah, too late. Then we burn all the intros just before we start recording. That didn't happen today because we just got nothing. We have nothing. And I don't want to do kids anymore.
We can't do kids.
It's too much.
Do you have a good story? Maybe you have a good story.
I do have a Florida story. I have a fishing story. So I actually
there you go.
Let's go for that.
I do fish, and I live in Florida, and we do spend about half the time in the Keys. So we try to go down there anytime my son isn't in school. We buzz out of here and we head down to the Keys, and I really like to fish, and it's something that I really enjoy doing by myself in particular. I go out on my kayak, and I got really into trying to catch snook, which in the Florida Keys is, they're in the shallow waters, and I'll have to show you this picture, but I kind of was getting skunked all summer and really frustrated and annoyed and I like to, I'm all about the process, right? I'm a process person. I'm a RevOps. So I don't like to use live bait. I think it's cheating, unless you're feeding your family. So I use plastic lures, and I try different colors, and they have little tails and all this stuff. So anyway, so I was like, I need a sign, like something. I need to catch this fish, and I hooked a big one. And it was, I had it on my fishing pole, and I use really light weight. So I don't know if you guys ever gone fishing before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's a fisher guy, yeah.
Okay. So I like to use really lightweight tackle. And so when you're, I'm in saltwater, so I had like 18-pound test, a short, probably 6-foot pole, very light. And so I hooked this fish, and I was like, oh my God, this is the biggest fish I've ever had on in my life. And I let the drag out. I let it run for about half an hour because I couldn't bring it in on the coral. So I bring it all the way around. I tire it down. I'm like, at this point, I'm totally invested. I'm like, I got to bring this freaking thing in. I saw part of it. I was like, this is huge. And I'm like that idiot. I'm pulling it up on the beach, and it gets like part way up, and he's like there in the water, and the line snaps because there was just too much weight when he kind of came. I'm like, oh crap. So I run in and I dive on the thing, and I'm like wrestling this thing, and there's all these people watching, and I'm sure I'm on the internet somewhere. And so I finally bring him out, and I just have this fish, and I'm like holding him like a baby. And I had to bring him over to my GoPro and get the picture. So I have this picture. It's actually on my LinkedIn.
Did you get the full thing on the GoPro?
I did.
You diving in? Oh, man.
No.
That would have been amazing.
I have my GoPro. I go by myself, so I had it set up on a tripod where all my stuff was. I'm sure somebody has it because there were like a ton of people around with their cameras and stuff. And but yeah, I got the picture, and then I let him go. But I didn't weigh it or measure it. But if you see me holding this thing, it's like massive. It's probably 3 times the size of any snook I've ever caught. But it was the one fish I caught all summer, so I was pretty pumped about it. But
Jesus,
yeah. So yeah,
that's a crazy story.
It's fun.
How do we loop this back to revenue operations, Mikko?
Yeah, I was thinking about my last fishing trip. I was like, we didn't catch anything, so I was like, that's gonna be kind of an end to the fun part.
Looping that back to marketing would be easy.
Stop it.
It was a process, man. As I kept putting the leads out
and
there,
you were hands-on.
I had to get right along the shore, and I just had
the
to
last
stay
mile
consistent.
delivery, you did everything.
Yeah, I executed. I practiced this. So
the tools let you down. You got it done anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the RevOps connection.
They really
right
didn't. There. They didn't really let me down. That was a big fish. It was. I was way under prepared.
There you go.
Amazing.
Well, you might have guessed it already. We have Sandy Robinson here, who's SVP of Revenue Operations at Patra. Welcome, Sandy.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful.
So we talked a bit about it as well before. Someone else arrived a bit late to the party here. You also host a podcast, actually.
I do.
So you're so vested in revenue operations that you have a show that's called RevOps Unboxed.
I do. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy just getting down with RevOps practitioners, no matter what level they are, and just chit-chatting about just kind of the real challenges that you have and, the day-to-day stuff. So
Yeah.
it's fun, just casual.
Nice. So totally check out Sandy's podcast here. But let's maybe dive into this. So Sandy, you and I chatted, I feel like a month or two ago, talked a little bit about you moving to the new company you're at. But before we kind of go to all of that story, can you give us a little bit of background, kind of all the different steps you've been going through actually kind of throughout your career, right? Because you kind of very much started in sales and then had a couple of really successful gigs in sales ops and RevOps. So I think a little bit of that background would be great for the audience here.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I started out in advertising sales. So Yellow Pages advertising, Penny Saver. I was in Northern California area. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the competition. Yellow Pages was like hardcore selling Yellow Pages advertising back then. It was fun, but I had an aspiration to be in management leadership, and I got really into the sales training, so kind of ingrained my way into helping out with the new hire onboarding. Landed a sales manager job at like 23, so that was really interesting. I was managing my peers at that time, and so I just was in sales, outside sales, field sales for just a number of years, and went to insurance and sales leadership and directors, kind of like moved up through the ranks. And, I had a great mentor. She was like, hey, you're really good at all this stuff, like getting decks together and doing your numbers and your territories. Have you heard of the sales ops thing? And that was in about, I think, 2012, where she said, we really need a sales ops leader. I think this would be a great job for you. And it was great because I never really thought about it. I was like, wow. And it was, so that's kind of been the story. And then sales ops was a lot of everything. I think, I think I've always been kind of doing RevOps because I was always doing lead gen and worrying about, our renewals and all the things that are happening. So I just love how it's evolved and gotten a lot more credibility over the years in terms of the role having a seat at the table.
Do you think that your commercial past, so really front lines, do you think that helped you being a better revenue ops and sales ops leader?
I mean, I do, because I feel like I want to put something out there that the salespeople will actually use and it won't actually drive them insane. So one of the things that I'll take a look at is, what are all the check boxy things they have to do, or what are all the things that they have to do that are duplicative in their day, and is their manager asking them for like a secret spreadsheet on the side, right? And because that happens, I mean,
it's there all the time.
I know. And so how can I put something together, not to just like oversee and police them, but something that's actually useful? So I try to let all the reps know, like, I get it. And, don't tell me it's great if it's really bullshit, right? Like if you can't use it, let me know, give me the feedback. So my goal is to really give them things that make their lives easier and that they can actually use, because otherwise it's just wasting all of our time, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think this is almost good advice for, people on the RevOps sales ops side to request that kind of candid feedback, if you will. But then also the other way around from commercial leadership to also give it proactively, right? Like, hey, this is busy work. Why do we need this in the first place? And then, ideally kind of cutting some of this away. I think that's some of those day-to-day struggles that folks are going through. On the, you kind of then, have been a little bit, or, spent obviously quite some time on the sales ops RevOps side. What I thought was extremely interesting was you joining your current company, right? So how did that actually happen? Who was giving current leadership the idea of building out revenue operations? Because Patra is, obviously kind of a mature organization, right? They're around founded like early 2000s. So not this hot, super young startup that's just around the corner, basically. So give us a little bit of that story there, because I think this is extremely interesting for people listening to this.
Definitely interesting. I mean, they reached out to me actually around this time last year, and it just caught my eye because they were located in El Dorado Hills, which is where I lived in Northern California. So that's where the headquarters is, and just started chatting, and they engaged with FTV Capital, who said, hey, it might be a good idea to have a revenue operations leader in place. So that was the recommendation. So they went out on a search, and we just kind of casually started talking, and then it started becoming more and more interesting to me because, one, I have an insurance background, right? So I was at Kemper for like 7 or 8 years in a number of different roles on the sales and sales ops side. So somehow it drew me back to the business, I guess. It's kind of an interesting business. But I also understand the challenges, and that there's a lot of transformation that has been going on and needs to happen in the industry in general, right? And so it seemed like a really interesting opportunity to kind of come in and build a function that, in a company that, has been in existence for a long time, right? Because I've built it out and rebuilt in, startups. I, built it out at a company that, just didn't really have one before. At Kemper, I guess, so it may not have been too different there. But now that technology has changed and technology has evolved, it's just I thought it'd be a fun challenge, and it definitely is.
So I'm hearing this more and more that venture capital companies or private equity companies are driving some of this more and more. And in your case, it seems to be similar, right? Kind of one of the institutional investors basically kind of pushing this to a degree. From their perspective, right? Because they don't care about, Salesforce boxes that someone needs to check. They don't care about Apex code that's written or comp plans being built. Why do you think, from their perspective, why are they pushing for revenue operations to be present in that particular, or in organizations in general?
Just my opinion. I think it's just building out the revenue engine, looking at it holistically, right? I think it's so easy for leaders to look at it in silos, or just look at it as, oh, well, we need to get a CRM, and then that'll solve all of our problems. Versus really, how do you stitch all these different departments together? So I think that's kind of the understanding, and with RevOps being at the center of that. I mean, my day-to-day is just usually a lot of education and teaching around what is revenue operations, and how can revenue operations help the business, and just really that fine-tuning between RevOps and sales ops. But they also offer a lot of support. So I have a RevOps partner that I work with, and we meet frequently. We bounce ideas off each other. So there's additional resources, which I find to be great. And it just kind of helps to bring support into things that I'm trying to do and teach in the organization, and then have also the support of our partners. So it's been a great relationship.
I am also wondering, usually when you go and hire, especially more senior folks such as yourself, you hire them with a specific purpose. There's something you want to accomplish. There's also a mandate that you give that person. What was kind of the, you've interviewed and obviously also worked there now for a couple of months at least. So what's been the main goal that they wanted to drive through those conversations once you started actually talking with Patra?
Yeah, so one of the big things is dialing in our sales compensation plans, and what do those look like, and to try to drive the right behavior. And the other piece is accurate forecasting, right? And so those are linked to, those are linked together. There's also the systems, and what's kind of been set up, and my plans to take that to the next level and do some cleanup and things like that. So it's really mostly been around the compensation plan and the retooling of our systems and updating the sales process. Additionally, onboarding. So I'm also revenue enablement extraordinaire. So I don't know if extraordinaire is the right word, but I recently obtained a certification for MEDDPICC, and put together an onboarding plan for 15 of our new sales folks. So I was hired, and then we're like, oh, by the way, we're going to hire like 15 people. So can you put together onboarding? I'm like, sweet, I'll do that. So I kind of onboarded myself while creating this, pretty basic onboarding framework to get everybody dialed in, and then, execute MEDDPICC as well.
I think kind of, the topics that you mentioned there, so classic sales ops, RevOps topics, right? Commission plans, forecasting accuracy, systems and stuff. I mean, to a degree, at least this is my guess or my bet, and you tell me how far I'm off here. But it sounds a little bit, these things are kind of on the surface, right? Those are the surface level things that someone can see and point at, like, oh, the sales forecast is wrong. Someone needs to fix that. But all of these things are, much deeper and much more connected than some people, see at the first moment, right? And I would almost say, given also that the organization is like almost 20 years or something like this old, which is not old, by the way, just want to say that out loud as well. But it's really almost, things have changed in the world. Sure, it might be technology, it might be go-to-market, it might be talent, it might be all kinds of different things. And large parts of the organization might have not, right? Especially in your case, the go-to-market side might have not changed. And it's manifesting itself in forecast accuracy, commission plans, and systems. But it's really, we need to, take what we've built for the last decade, and we kind of need to update this for, the ongoing decade. And that's what's, revenue ops almost is coming in to do, right? Would you agree with that, or how do you see that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's easy to say, like, on the surface, here are the priorities. And what I think a lot of folks that maybe don't understand RevOps, it's like there might be 460 root causes that you need to address and kind of peel together and figure out, okay, how do I impact the forecast accuracy, right? Like, so just for an example, like if deals slip, why did deals slip? Well, there could be a lot of reasons. It could be do they need sales training? It could be, maybe the contracts, could be the product offering. It could be just the compensation, the tracking, the reward system. There's so many different things. Or it could just be something simple in the system that people don't get. So that's where I think, just really as somebody in RevOps, understanding that, all the aspects and the underlying causes, and then figuring out, okay, like what's going to have the biggest impact to that. So my challenge when I started, I was like, ooh, I want to do all this. I can do all these big things. And, but you can't boil the ocean. You can't get it all done. Fortunately, we have a great marketing team who's built a nice inbound engine and, lead process trade shows. So I've been focused more on the, actual sales ops side of things and to implementations, because, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm focusing in on where can I have the biggest impact on that forecast and on the pipeline. So that's where I've really focused, would be that, deal opportunity, sales journey to go, implementation, the handoff to implementation. So that's been my, kind of world here the last 6 months.
So again, I'm, in this case, also only guessing here, but, thinking about this organization, thinking about the projects you're working on, this is less so about figuring out what the right forecasting methodology is. If it's, MEDDPICC or whatever, that doesn't actually matter. Or compensation plan to figure out, hey, what is the right number? That's not actually what this is about. I mean, it's a lot about driving this change with people, right? I mean, it's like at the end of the day, you're kind of fresh in the organization, and there might be like an immediate resistance to like, hey, how is this different from the CRM admin that we had for 20 years?
Right,
of, number one. And number two, wait a minute. Sandy is now changing my compensation plan. Sandy is now changing how, I'm forecasting. I can see that there's a lot of, resistance or not. I don't know. You tell me, that you kind of need to work through in order to make that change work out.
Definitely a lot. So one of the discussions I have with my team, and I will this afternoon in our team meeting, is getting away from being the help desk, right?
Yeah.
So the catch-all, we've got an inbox, and they're just constantly running around and just doing these one-off requests that are not repeatable, not scalable, and we need to answer the question, should we even do it? Like, why do they need a spreadsheet with 54 contacts that, pull them out of the CRM? They don't, right? So what is the root cause of them asking? And so trying to get away from that help desk admin mindset to, hey, we're driving the change, we're driving in being more of advisors in the business, and here's how we are planning to move forward with your input. So I'm in the process of updating our playbook. So I've spent the last 2 weeks with my team, daily sessions going line by line, and okay, what needs to change, like BANT. Okay, so like how do we bring in the elements of MEDDPICC? How do we have entry and exit criteria? Like just like 101 sales ops stuff. And then what needs to happen in the CRM and what's linked to it. So, we had 266 fields on our deal. So where do those all go, right? We don't need those. So we're literally going through line by line. Okay, we can archive these. These are connected to this app, whatever it is. And then from there, taking it to the sales leaders, getting their input, and just really having conversations on things like, how to use what stage 1 should be into stage 2, right? Like stuff like that, like using stage 1 as a lead versus, having a lead, just these conversations, because those are all the root causes of why our pipeline is, why we're striving for deal accuracy, and all these other things in our forecast accuracy.
And how do you go about implementing that actually? And kind of maybe not necessarily kind of in the system world, but is it basically you need to level set with the sales leader and then roll it out through the sales leadership, or do you go directly to the reps? What is kind of your way of managing that change through?
All of the above. So I like to first bounce off different people individually, like, hey, what do you think about this? Get folks outside of our organization, outside of our silo. So like in the ops world, implementations, and get their opinions and what problems do we cause the ops team, right? And then, really working closely with my peers and the leadership to say, hey, give me your input. Here is the recommendations, and let's kind of go through and hash out, what that ends up being. So the goal is to have something mutually agreeable that, we come out of it, and then working with marketing, with operations, and all the other folks that are involved. So, it just kind of starts, I think, diving down into the weeds in our world, and then getting something consumable we can circulate to other folks and get their input on it as we, put this into place.
So you mentioned MEDDPICC. Is this, I'm just curious, is this fully implemented now, or is this something you're working on currently?
Yeah, so it is fully implemented, meaning we initially rolled out last April, and did our second wave because I just got certified. So I just did the new hire onboarding. So they're currently going through the rest of their training. But I do have it, meshed in with our tools and the, call recording and the trackers, and, kind of easy way for them to do it. But this is what we're striving to as an organization, to have everybody utilizing the same language, and getting the system more aligned than it is today is where I'm going. So fortunately, there's call recording tools such as Gong that have this stuff built in that I was easily able to just like turn on and aggregate everything in. So since our CRM's a little bit under construction right now, let's just say. So going into Gong was great because I, could just put up a quick deal board, and all their calls are there, all the MEDDPICC fields, all the MEDDPICC trackers. So it's really easy to gauge how we're doing in our adoption and things like that. So it was like something I could just flip a switch on, and it was easy for everybody to use. But we need to kind of take that to the next level now and get everything fully integrated into HubSpot and what we're doing there. So.
I mean, you have consultants selling a ton of services around implementing and training in MEDDPICC. I'm guessing here that this was not a small change for the sales team.
Yes, and in fact, it was kind of coinciding with my interview process, right? So they were already having discussions with force management at the time I was being interviewed. And so we literally, the same week kicked off MEDDPICC in my first week. So, and then it was like, okay, I'm running with it. I need to figure this out and how to, implement it and make it all work. But, I've done a lot of sales training. I did Challenger. I did Challenger at 2 different organizations. One very successful because the whole organization was involved between the products being lined, the systems being lined, leadership. I mean, it was very successful, but the other not as successful because it was, more like, okay, that's a sales thing. Good luck. And so since I've learned in doing these in the past, it's, I really look at it holistically, right? And how everybody, we've got to do the coaching. The coaching is critical. So I'm trying to work on ways to support the sales managers to help make it easier for them to conduct their coaching conversations, and then align the tools with it so it can all, kind of work together easily. So, I mean, it's the whole methodology to process to system, right?
Yeah.
So you have to kind of make it all work together.
So, and maybe kind of, so this whole MEDDPICC thing is obviously interesting, kind of how it integrates. I would actually kind of be curious on, let's just say you've done this now, check mark, the organization has moved to a new place. How are you gonna judge whether or not that worked out, right? Because I'm not sure who has worked with force management. Those guys are not cheap. Doing this whole roll up is also taking a lot of management time, and then all the system integration. So at the end of this whole journey, how are you gonna say what are the metrics? Let's just say it like this: what are the metrics you're gonna measure in order to say like, hey, we improved?
Yeah, so one of those is going to be the conversion and the pipeline progression, right? And how do those metrics look? I'm trying to stay away from checkboxy. Did you fill out these fields? Which is why I'm looking at, there's some new folks out there that are providing some very specific AI around MEDDPICC. So again, going back to like making this easier for salespeople. But for me, success, ultimately we're driving. This is easy to say, a revenue target, right? But having the lingo and the coaching conversations and the adoption, another indicator is the number of contacts. So right now we have an average of 1.1 contacts associated with a deal. We all know in a B2B buying world, you've got to, that's what, 6 to 10 now, Gartner says, or whatever it is, right? So you can't possibly just be talking to one person. So if in my mind, if we have an average of 3 contacts associated with a deal, like that's massive success that people have gone out and found 3. Because I think a lot of folks in not specific to where I'm at, I've seen this in the past, is you get the one person you're talking to, you think they're the economic buyer, they're going to do the trick, and you don't really go wide enough in the organization, right? For a larger B2B sale. So to me, that's success. If that 1.1 goes to 3, and the new hires, so I'm kind of tracking their performance separately. So deals they create. So I've kind of got that, not deals that have been handed. So I have a separate report for that. How are they performing? And, are they closing? And then obviously, average deal size. Another thing that I have sights on to improve is our push rate. So pushing the close date out. So if I can dramatically improve that, I do have some targets. I'm not going to share the specific details, but if I can, hit those targets that I'm setting out, like to me, that's massive success. So those are the kind of things I'm looking at.
If I just kind of change the words that you just said there, right? I mean, number one, more contacts per deal. That basically translates into a higher overall win rate or close win rate, however you want to call it, right? Conversion rate. You were talking about the push count, which basically talks into sales cycle length, right? Kind of, how often is this being pushed out versus you close it on the first or second push. And then the third thing you also were mentioning is specific ACVs, right? Kind of where are we landing here, right? All of those are massive levers to pull, massive efficiency levers to pull, right? Because it's you're basically, and that's the crazy thing about those 3 things, they compound each other, if you will, right? And I think that by itself kind can obviously improve the efficiency of a single rep, but it can also improve the efficiency of a whole sales and marketing organization, right? So there's it's like pretty big things that it kind of, trying to achieve there. And, obviously kind of, we're not going to talk about the specific targets here, but I think this is a good way for revenue operations to talk about some of those projects and how they're gonna impact revenue overall, actually. So it's really, really cool to see how you guys have been thinking about it and making the decision for it, and then ultimately gonna try and measure that.
Yeah, I mean, in the other piece is go lives and cancel rate, right? So from sign to go live, and that's been a huge area of focus, which is hand in hand with MEDDPICC, because as you're going through the qualification process, in our world, it's really important to get with the technical buyers and the ops folks that are actually going to be working with our teams at Patra. So bringing the implementations team, together, being more ingrained. They are coming into our CRM. So currently they're operating outside of it in another tool. So we are actually just kicked off a project to bring them in, and we'll have that going live at the beginning of the year. So that will inevitably bring everything together, and having those technical buyers, so bringing in MEDDPICC with that and bringing the teams in and, kind of shifting that accountability. And then as we go through the playbook is aligning the roles and responsibilities. So when does the implementations team come in? Can they come in sooner? And all these things will help us to shorten our time to go live, and to reduce our cancel rates if we do all those things together, right? So that's what I'm betting on, that if we do all those things and we align everything, we are going to improve it. So it's not just one thing that's going to do the trick. And to your point kind of earlier that you were talking about.
So this is super interesting, right? So, and it's almost, I'm interested in how you got to the solution, to be honest, because it's, you can look at, and maybe you said, hey, our closing rates, our ACVs, whatever, is not on benchmark, and there's something to improve here. And then, hey, our cancellation rates are high, and implementation is taking too long. Was that the level you started at? And then it was like, oh, for this area over here, we could have some sales training, some methodology change, some, forecasting changes. For this over here, we could pull them into a tool. Was that how you went about this, or is it, or was it different?
No, I kind of looked at all of the work that was being done outside of the CRM, and we have currently a stage 5 that everything comes to operate to my team, and kind of manually, it's like a holding stage before a close. So there's a lot of manual work in that. We are causing a delay in even getting it to the implementations because of the manual nature of a lot of the data that's coming over. So it just took me a couple seconds to go, why do we have a stage 5? Well, it's because we have to do this, and we have to, make sure this is here and send this email. And it's because everything is in different data silos in different places. So it was pretty easy to see that I can easily make a difference if we put in a few stage requirements, a couple automations, a couple workflows into it. We can easily, on our end, without even impact, discussing with other teams, we can clean up our time to go live when somebody gets a deal signed, right? So it kind of started there, and then I started investigating, as to, well, then what happens after? Like, where does that go?
And was that, so I'm still digging on this one. Sorry, I'm
go for it.
But the thing is, right? So number one, I think in general, RevOps folks are talking about, oh, this doesn't make sense. This should be smoother. This should be different. It should be more automated. But really, what the impact of that might be is, well, we can, speed up the time to value. We can, reduce the cancellation rate. Whatever metric does it and revenue impact is around this, right? You can go about it, hey, this metric is bad, what can we do about this? And you might land in tooling world. Or the other way around, it's like, hey, that doesn't make any sense. And now we need to sell the change to someone, right? Because, hey, someone needs to prove that you should be spending time on this. And then you could actually kind of tie in those metrics in order to kind of build the case. Like, hey, listen, this isn't working as it should be. there's something super inefficient here, we can fix it. And that will drive up X, Y, and Z metric that you really care about, right? So it's like it's almost two ways you can go about this actually. And it feels like you at least took one of them actually in order to, again, drive this change, get this thing approved, move it through the project process, so to speak. Is that right, or am I reading too much into it?
No, so I actually did kind of both. So
Yeah.
taking the actual metrics in the slide and where can we cut out time? Here's how many days. That all went up the chain, right?
Yeah.
And so that's to all the other department heads, to folks on my team, and then in terms of the people that are actually in doing the work, it was like, okay, let's just dive in and see all the things we shouldn't be doing, right? And why are you doing this here? Well, because I have to do this because it goes to this system, and so I really did both, because you have to do a lot of selling, internal selling with other stakeholders, right, that are in C-level or other VPs and SVPs of the organization, but then you kind of have to talk to the people that are actually grinding and doing it every day.
So this is my last final statement. Then Mikkel can
Real deficient.
It's no. It's already there. It's already there. I'm just kind of summing up here for my own sake, I feel. No, I mean, it's you started this out with. You started this out with like, hey, we need to understand, or you need to understand the revenue engine end to end. You need to understand how this organization is making money. Over here, marketing, everything was kind of fine. Sales and implementation, or whatever it might be. There were some, opportunities to improve. And then, hey, here's some solution proposals that are connected to metrics that management cares about that then have a revenue impact. And for me, it's kind of, you don't only need to go end to end in terms of the revenue engine, you also need to go up and down the hierarchy chain, right? Kind of, it's like you need to be able to talk to the ones that are actually implementing this thing. You need to be able to talk to your peers and make sure that, hey, they're A-okay with doing this. And then talk to your boss or whoever sits on top and sell that project there, right? So this RevOps, especially kind of RevOps leadership role, it's pretty darn difficult if you think about what all the things I need to know and understand in order to be successful in that role. I just wanted to kind of make that statement. And maybe this is now over to you, Mikkel.
Well, I mean, close to what I was going to ask, actually, because one of the things I mentioned to Tony before we hopped on the call with you, Sandy, is when driving change, I think maybe this was McKinsey or something, they said, well, if there's people who are unwilling to embrace change, you let them go. And I was like, well, so number one, that's a pretty cold or binary worldview to have, number one. And number two, if you're in revenue operations, you might not have the authority to, force people to follow a new process or follow the change you want to drive. So how have you kind of navigated that? Because even with MEDDPICC, and if you want to change forecasted or commissions, that's a very sensitive thing to a lot of folks. There are going to be people who's going to start barking. So I'm curious what you've done there, what some of the struggles were, and how you navigated that part.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've seen any of my content on RevTech, but I try to align everybody on this idea of revenue technology, right? That it is focused on the customer. And one of the first things that I'll show in the presentation is a quote about the status quo, right? And how, continuing with the status quo isn't, sustainable, right? So we have to challenge the status quo. And being that we all just did MEDDPICC, it's also very helpful because that's a lot of what you talk about in the, decision criteria and all the things about, really in your competition, your biggest competition is the status quo. So I try to start out with that and just challenge people to say, okay, is there a new way of thinking about things? And it's, people understand a CRM system. People understand that we need all the contacts and we need all of the information about the relationship. So I think that's a very common understanding that everybody acknowledges that we don't have that today, right? And so it's just, I think, listening and just understanding that change isn't easy, and I know it's not going to happen overnight. And I'm not coming in here saying I'm going to change the world in 90 days or anything like that. But what are the things we can agree on to beta test and to pilot. I like using those terms. It seems, it's less risky with people. So we did do a pilot with getting our implementations team in Gong, and they liked being in the calls, and I was able to work it out with a 2-week free trial to kind of get them in and to see. So getting people engaged, and then they tell their leaders. So I don't know. I have a way of just trying to go around and it's much like in talking to an economic buyer. You're talking to them about what do they care about versus the technical buyer and the things that they care about. But I mean, I agree with what you said, Tony. It's there's I've got to flip the switch, so I can talk nerdy, like totally nerd out about all the system stuff and what's happening, at least enough, right? Like I'm by far I hire. I have a great, amazing admin that I just brought on board, and so she'll figure out exactly how it needs to be done. But being able to kind of flip the switch, because no CEO wants to hear about, how do these systems integrate and how are they going to work in the background? Like they don't give a crap about that, right? Mm-hmm. They just want to know, like, how much is it going to cost? And why do they need to do it now? Like, why can't we just wait till next year and budget? And so that's really, picking my battles and what do I think is going to have the most impact that we're going to realistically be able to get in place is huge, because there are a lot of things I really want to do. But I don't know that I want to try a bunch of them out right now, right? So I want to get the sustainable, biggest impact, change in the system, or to be able to show that, hey, this is something that's actually going to pull people together. It's not going to be some extra box check that you want to do, and things like that. And the C-suite isn't going to hear people whining about they don't like, the tool they have to use or the thing they have to do.
I'm wondering, just at least the last question for me, it's kind of a take it home, I guess, almost question. We can squeeze in yours in the end, maybe. Okay. But no, one thing I'm wondering,
since you were late, right?
Yeah, since you were late. That's true. No, I mean, so I checked your experience on LinkedIn, and you mentioned in the beginning, you've kind of been all the way from sales, Yellow Pages time to now SVP, revenue operations, and obviously driving change at a larger, well-established company, also with a lot of history, right? Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, for the listeners out there, what are some of the things actually you've learned in that process that might not be so obvious to folks that they should be aware of if they're going to go and drive change or really succeed through revenue operations? Because what I really liked so far is you've talked a lot about the revenue side and not just let's connect this tool with that and then boop, done, right? It's very much minded on the full revenue engine, basically.
Yeah, I mean, communication, I think, is huge internally, like being able to talk to people, have them understand. I tend to talk fast and get all excited, but I don't want to lose people, right? So you have to, I think, really establish, like, who is your audience? Who are you communicating to? What message do you want to get across? Be very thoughtful about that when you're working with, whether it's peers, it's subordinates, or, cross-functional leaders, the C-suite, whatever it is. I think I've learned a lot over the years. I've been through mergers, acquisitions, new leaders, understand that everybody at the end of the day is worried about their jobs. I mean, let's just be real. It's not like when I sold Yellow Pages, it was like, oh, I'm the hero if I sign on the dotted line, and like, it's just, it doesn't work that way. And you care about, like you said earlier, Tony, like, well, we've got kids. We're not going to the bar. We're going home and hanging out with our kids. Like, that's what people care about, right? And so if I'm coming in there and potentially talking about something that might disrupt their world or it might change things, it's a risk for them. If I'm going to the head of operations and saying, hey, I know you've been using this tool. I need you to get on the trust train with me, and like, let's do this together. So how do I establish that is the biggest thing that I've learned, that taking that fear, everybody has that, well, this new person's coming in and they're going to change stuff. And everybody has that, and clam up and go, well, this is mine. This is my budget. This is this. I don't give a shit whose budget it is. I really don't. all I care about is, how does this work together? So I think it's just communicating that I'm not a threat and I'm really here to learn about the problems and here to help. I don't care if it reports up to the CRO org. Doesn't matter to me. It's really everything that impacts the deal, everything that impacts the life cycle of the deal. And whoever the people that touch it and the technology that touches it. And a lot of people don't think of it that way. I even I love getting with CIOs. My husband's one, so I can say this. So I always test stuff out on him because he's like, they only think with their left brain. They don't really have a lot of, at least my CIO husband. But anyway, but getting with the CIO and it's like, well, what's your process for evaluating tech, right? Oh, well, we have a procurement, we have this, and we do this. Well, how do you decide should we? Where's the business case in that? And how do we take that and have that as a discussion? Can you be the point that says, hey, should we do this, and how does this affect the broader company and the customer life cycle if you bring in a second project management tool just because you like one that looks pretty and the other one doesn't? Should we do it? So who's going to answer the should? So I don't know. It's a lot of people, working with people, understanding what they're about, understanding that, they may have brought in a process or a tool at some point for a period of time. And, maybe that does need to change, but it's not a reflection of them, right? It's just where we are in the times and how can we work together to make that better, not how can you look like you didn't know what you're doing in the first place, because that's totally untrue. Like, technology has changed so quickly over even the last couple of years since COVID, with AI and all the things that are out there. We have to, I think, approach it that way, that we're kind of all in this together. It doesn't always work, and some people don't respond to that. I try to focus on the folks that do, and people see over time that actually oh, maybe I should get on board. So that's just the
Wonderful.
way it's kind of how I roll.
Sandy, I think this was a perfect way to end this episode. I'm gonna shut up.
You're gonna cut yourself off.
Yes. Sandy, thank you so much for spending some time and spilling some of your wisdom here.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys having me and letting me tell my fish story.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a picture.
Please
You
do.
have to. You have to. Yeah.
Thank
Sandy,
you so much, Sandy.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.